strength, power, and coordination. So that's all we're going to talk about. So we're going to figure out what is strong enough, all right? And then we're going to talk about the importance of speed, and then we're just going to dissect it in just a little bit in terms of how strength, power, and coordination make up speed. So first we're going to talk about essentially just the hierarchy of athletic development. So as you can see is we start off with, we have work capacity at the base of our pyramid, right? You have to earn the right to do your strength, power, and speed work. So you got to be fit. Next, we talk about strength, power, and then finally topping off about with speed. But what we're going to talk about right now is just the strength portion of it. So there is a pretty linear relationship between training age and volume. So as we get further along in our training age, we're going to have to do increase the volume in terms of the weight, the load on the bar, as well as the number of repetitions to continue to see physiological adaptations. So essentially, why does this really happen? So what we do know is that younger, less developed athletes require less training volume. You know, I always like to say with young athletes, you can, make them clap 3 times, spin around 6 times. You do that, long enough, they'll get faster. It really, really requires not much work on your end to get a young, new athlete faster or stronger. Now, with experience, they require a little bit more training volume. And then with our experienced athletes, we significant volume to see increases in physiological and performance adaptations. So here is just kind of how my mind works and just how I break up between a novice, intermediate, and an advanced athlete. So everyone has a training tolerance, okay? So when we're novice athletes, we can actually just do we have linear periodization, parallel, whatever you want to call it. We can do our strength, sport, and speed work all at equal components. But as we go along, we know as intermediates, if we continue on that trend and furthermore as advanced, we're going to hit our training tolerance. And at this training tolerance is where we're actually going to see injury rates happen, overtraining, and this leads to detraining, and then you end up on the table, injured, and that's not what we want. So we know really this is not the right way, okay? So what is strong enough? It becomes a very powerful tool in determining how we should allocate our time, all right? So we know with sprinting, kicking, and jumping, there is a strength component, but we do know that there is a tipping point. So really and truly, what is that number? What is that we're trying to find? How much strength and what is strong enough? So here's a little bit more appropriate allocation of time. So again, as you can see, we have our traditional periodization where we have equal components of each skill we're trying to improve. So we have our strength, sport, and speed. And now, as you can see, as we get more intermediate, our strength work, our time allocated to strength work may be less, and advanced, it may be less. Now, this model here is for a team sport athlete, okay, where strength is not the limiting factor, but it is important. So as we're novices, we really just want to make sure we can get to that strength number, whatever that is. Once we get there, now we actually can allocate more time to the things that are important. So our speed and our sport, okay? So we know this is a appropriate model. So it comes down to how do we figure this out? This is a really, really simple, basic intervention. So essentially what we have, you have a 12 weeks time period, you have your skill, you have your strength modality, you test them together, run your stats, and you can start to figure out what that number is. So here's a real example that we did with our academy athletes. And what we found is we had our 40-meter sprint and our front squat 1 RM. So, we do know that strength is a component of speed. So we ended up just chasing that strength number. Let's get them strong as we can and see what happens to their 40-meter sprint times. And essentially what we found was if you were a less than 1.25 body weight front squat, we were called it a strength deficit. Greater than 1.25, a strength association, and then greater than 1.35 was a strength surplus. So essentially what we found is that 1.25 seemed to be that sweet spot. So it comes down to how much do you squat? Do you squat more than 1.25? No. Let's focus on a strength-based program. Yes. Now, are you technically proficient while doing it? No. Go back to strength. Let's improve from the technical standpoint. We want it to look smooth and comfortable. Yes. Let's focus on power. Okay. So this is kind of my thought process, and this is what I go through. And it's just a simple way for me able to put my athletes in buckets. So now it comes down to the beauty and the beast, all right? So when I'm talking about the beauty and the beast with regards to running, we have the beauty, which is the technical side of it, okay? How smooth they look, what are the shapes that they have when they're running, okay? From max velocity shapes to early acceleration, transition shapes. Then we have the beast, which is the physiological adaptations. You know, as a gym guy, the beast is what I love, all right? Being able to improve our strength, power, okay? Now, with that beauty and the beast, there's this kind of continuum that's going on where we have our strength, we have our power, and we have our coordination. Now, these things are all going on simultaneously as we run, right? So it's figuring out how much of each do we need, or how to pick apart an athlete, like, hey, you know what, you need more of this, you need more of that. That's where it becomes really, really powerful, because again, you know, time is really important when it comes to any kind of athlete. We want to, you know, make the most of our time, or they say biggest bang for their buck. So I'm just going to dissect this now. So with strength, okay, simply put, we need, for faster speeds, there's greater ground reaction forces, okay? And at top speed, we're seeing ground reaction forces around 2 to 3 times body weight, okay? So with this, it becomes really important to just have relative strength, okay? Strength over body weight. Whatever your strength modality is, divide it by your body weight, and then you get your relative strength number. And this is what I tend to look at more so than how much do you lift. It's relative. That is really important to an athlete that is not a weightlifter or a power lifter. Okay. Now with power, it just comes down to rate of force development. How fast can you produce that force? Now, what we've seen, and we know by Ken Clark's work, is that greater forces are in the first half of the stance phase. So what we have here is we have a competitive sprinter. So this sprinter here can run about 9.5, 10 meters per second. So that's really fast, okay? Whereas the non-sprinter, or this athlete, okay, they ran about 8 meters per second. And you can just see the difference in their force curve, okay? Again, we have, it's smooth here, whereas there's a peak and then it drops, okay? That seems to be the fundamental difference. So faster athletes can produce power, or have a better rate of force development. I apologize. Now, coordination is a really weird one. And right now, I consider almost like the wild, wild west. For the simple fact is we don't really, unless you have expensive equipment, it's hard to measure this, right? And this tends to be very, very qualitative. And I'll explain. So essentially we have is, this is someone going through a graphic, going through their running gait, okay? As you go, they go through their stance phase and then their swing phase, okay? This now is about 0.25 seconds. So really, really quickly, like 2 to 3 tenths of a second, which is really fast. But if you can see all the different muscles that are being activated, right? They're turning on and turning off, turning on, turning off. as they go through their gait. Okay, this is the inter and intramuscular coordination, and how do these again, how do they sequence? How do they work as you're running? So this is something that uh, there are some people that are putting EMGs on quads and hamstrings and actually determining this. But again, unless you have an absorbent amount of money, I think it's about 10 grand to get that unit. Uh, you got to just do it from the qualitative standpoint. So now let's just go back to the strength. How do we train it? Okay, simply put, we want to increase our relative strength, right? But again, it comes at a cost. So we know as we are younger in training age, increasing our relative strength will increase our speed. But as we get older, increasing the relative strength from the gym, right? So pushing the numbers up in the gym can have deleterious effects on our speed, and that's not what we want. So with our strength, it's just simple bilateral exercises. And these exercises here, simply, once I know that they're strong enough, I just do these exercises to test and see how much strength they've improved, how much more strength have they gotten from our speed work. And I'll explain that a little bit later. Okay. You got this, you got this. Yeah. Power now. Power, again, is an increase in our rate of force development, right? And simply put, when we do bilateral exercises, we see increases in speed, okay, contraction velocity, the muscles. Unilateral exercises, I found, they just transfer better. So when it comes to this, when I have athletes that are really slow, I'll do more bilateral exercises to get a better speed stimulus. And once we fill up that bucket of bilateral exercises, and we see the transfer start to cease to their sprinting speed, we'll then go to unilateral exercises for better transfer. Okay, and with these exercises, I found our peak power box squat. Okay, as we see this, the peak power improve on this exercise, we've seen initial and early acceleration improve. Okay, then we have our rear foot elevated peak power exercise. And from this, we've seen our transition. So about our 10 to 20 yard splits will improve. Okay. Coordination. So coordination really is simple. It's an improvement in technique. Okay. If someone comes up with bad technique, we can improve it and we'll see increases in their speed. Okay. Technique is a nervous system component. Okay. Going back to that last graph that I showed you with the muscles turning on and off, technique can help correct that and give you better inter and intramuscular coordination patterns. Okay, so how do you train it? I like to think of this as like you gotta walk and chew gum at the same time. All right, so it comes down to it's limb disassociation. So having one limb working while the other is doing something else. And that's really what running is, because your limbs, again, they're splitting really quick. There's a scissor action going at the hips and going at the thighs. Okay. And then contract and relax muscles. Going back to that graph, we know that things are turning on and off very, very quickly. And then lastly is overspeed running. I found it really it corrects a lot of technique. And as well as it gives your athletes a stimulus that, quite frankly, they're just not used to. And there is a point where too much can be bad. But again, if you apply the right stimulus and you look at it, you can really see improvements. So here's a simple limb disassociation drill. So as you can see, one leg is doing a hip cycle while the other leg isn't. Okay. And then just simple A runs. Good. Neutral pelvis. Pop, 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 pop. Good. Okay. The switching becomes really, really important as well. Okay. And then in terms of contraction speeds, we want to be able to turn the muscles on and off very, very quickly. And we can train that. Again, repeated hurdle jumps. Simple. These are all exercises that people do and everyone does. It's just realizing what else does that exercise do. So just thinking of its purpose in a different way. Then we have overspeed runs. And great. The nervous system loves this. All right. And it really teaches your athlete to self-organize. So what is it? I have to run. I know I have to put my foot down, but it's like I'm putting it down at a quicker rate, something that, quite frankly, is not used to. Okay. Now, with regards to strength and power, we do have our horizontal and our vertical forces. So a lot of those exercises I showed you in the gym were very vertical oriented, and we do see transfer from those exercises. But sometimes, in most cases, once an athlete gets to a certain point, we're going to see those vertical forces start to dissipate, and we have to learn how to transfer that force horizontally to increase our speed. So again, we have heavy resistance sleds as well as horizontal jumps.
Yeah, come on, Melon.
So our triple broad jump, you can tell I'm kind of excited there. So it's about 10 meters, which is very, very significant. And what we see now is I use this as a coordination exercise. So essentially what I do is I take their triple broad jump, I divide it by their broad jump. If that number is over 3, I know that they have coordination, they're able to good elastic strength, and that just tells me a lot about the athlete. If they're less than that, then I know doing more of those drills and building up their coordination will help transfer to the field. So essentially, simply put, if you're over 3, you're good. If you're under 3, it's probably better to continue to do some more jumping exercises, just a little bit more. Then we have our heavy resistance sleds. So essentially what we do is we run a speed profile on our athletes where they'll go from body weight all the way up to body weight 25%, 50%, 70%, 75%, apologize, and then 100% body weight. We plot it on a line, and peak power seems to happen at 48 to 50%, 52% of velocity decrement. So we solve for that, and then we use that load to increase their 0 to 20 initial and early acceleration.
Good.
So here is a case study we did just before lockdown. So in Ontario here, we were locked down December 26, 2020. So before that, we were actually able to get 8 weeks in with this athlete here. And from week 1 to week 8, we improved right across the board. Okay. And our 5, 10, and 40 were significant changes, whereas our 20 didn't meet significance. But you can see again from it is an improvement, and he did see a 0.18 improvement. So, from a stats perspective, it's not significant, but from me just looking at that number, a 0.18 is good. Okay. And I was going to explain to you kind of what we did and improvements we saw. So this athlete here, front squat week 1 was 330. We put 15 pounds on it. His ratio improved 0.08, and his bench press improved as well. Peak power in certain exercise. So we have our speed squat, box squat, and rear foot elevated split squat. They all improved, and it was, again, significant. Now, let's just talk about the prescription for him. So with him, we had 4 sessions a week, 2 lower and 2 upper sessions. And this was the interesting one, is that we didn't put more than 70% of his 1 RM on the bar. And we did use bands as well as so accommodating resistance. And we had 2 speed sessions a week, and that was it. So going back to that map, for guys now, I use about a 1.7 body weight back squat. Okay, so with him, he fit it. So could he squat more than that? Yes. Was he technically proficient? Yes. So which is why we focus on a power based program. All right, and I think that's part of the reason why we saw significant changes in his 40 yards dash. And this is kind of how I look at it. If we have it on the blue line here represents a strength oriented program. The red line here represents a power oriented program. And what you can see as with strength on our x-axis here, our strength continually does increase. Our skill now, which is speed, can have a deleterious effect if we continue to chase strength, which is we went with a power-based program, whereas we saw his speed increase and his strength, again, slowly increased. So if we go back, in 8 weeks, his front squat only improved 15 pounds, right? I can do an 8 week program and I could probably put 50 pounds on that squat, right? If we really, really went after it and chased it. But again, we figured out what that number was. He was above 1.7. So I'm like, you're good. I don't really care about your strength anymore. I'm going to focus on other aspects. And that's why having having an idea of how much strength it is gives you is really powerful, and you don't waste time. So simple take homes from this: find your strength number, right? Figure out for whatever skill it may be. If you're throwing, kicking, hitting, um, jumping, whatever it may be, find that number, right? If you have a low training age, your strength builds your speed. But if you have a higher training age, your speed builds your strength. So as you saw with that case study, his strength did improve, right? It just goes along slower, but our other qualities improve to a greater degree, which is what we are after. So that